And welcome. Welcome, everyone. I know you think that sound, that score, the music cue is very familiar, but updated slightly. You're listening to Real Talk on 92.5 WLSD, The Vault, on Friday, July 5th, 2024. And did I say you're listening to Real Talk? I think I did. But tonight, we're going to dive into a very recent movie. It was released July 3rd, and it is a sequel, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. That is what we're going to be discussing tonight. But before we get into the show, please go to all of our social media pages. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. The numbers on all the social medias have been growing, so thank you very much. It is much appreciated. And we're going to dive in tonight. So, as you know, or maybe you don't know, there is a brand new Beverly Hills Cop movie out. It came out. It's the number one movie on Netflix. It is Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. And it debuted. It's Eddie Murphy's fourth film as Axel Foley. And to be honest with you, probably the last. I don't see this being a franchise that continues on and on and on and on. It took 30 years for this one to occur. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with tonight. Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. And let's talk a little bit about that tonight. Now, there were several different, as a matter of fact, 3 Beverly Hills Cop movies before. There was one in 1984, 1987, and 1994. Here it is, 30 years later, and there's a brand new Beverly Hills Cop. Now, I've kept up with entertainment and movies and such for many, many years, and there have always been small rumblings that there was going to be another Beverly Hills Cop movie. And who's to say, up until now, there was never any real reason to believe that it was going to happen. Because there had been so many false starts, so many false reports over and over again that was it ever going to happen? No one ever thought that it was, and it is. It's going to. So that is what we're dealing with right now. Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. We have Detective Axel Foley, who is Eddie Murphy, is back on the beat in Beverly Hills after his daughter's life is threatened. She and Foley team up with a new partner and old pals Billy and Taggart to turn up the heat and uncover a conspiracy. Now, that's basically the premise in a nutshell, and you're going to check out Beverly Hills Cop, Axel Foley, because there's a couple of reasons why. One, because you're already familiar with the franchise and you already know these characters, you love these characters, and you want to revisit them again years later just to see what they've been up to and to check out their if they're up to their old shenanigans. So that's something that's on the back burner as well. Also, if you haven't seen a brand new Eddie Murphy movie in quite some time, he had like a Christmas movie that came out back in the, I think it came out back in the winter, and I didn't watch it, but I thought it looked absolutely terrible. So I didn't do that. But this was the first R-rated movie that I'd seen Eddie Murphy be in quite some time, and here we are. So the director is Mark Malloy, and I found it pretty interesting that Mark Malloy, this is his feature film debut. He has not directed any other thing except television commercials. And he's an Australian commercial, television, and film director, and this is his feature film debut with Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. I'm going to try to say that title as many times as I can throughout this episode. So just expect that, because that's going to happen. But you've got a cast, of course, you've got Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley. You have Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Detective Bobby Abbott, and he's like some new blood to this franchise. Kevin Bacon as Captain Cade Grant. He's some new blood. Taylor Page as Jane Saunders. Judge Reinhold as Billy Rosewood. And then you've got John Ashton as Chief John Taggart. Paul Reiser as Jeffrey. And then you've got Bronson Pinchot as Serge. So you've got this eclectic cast. All the cast members have come back from the past films to enjoy the reunion that is Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. So let's get into a few facts about the movie, because this movie was 30 years in the making. So, like I said, this is 30 years after Beverly Hills Cop 3, 40 years after Beverly Hills Cop, the original. And the original, I was doing some research on Box Office Mojo last night. I go on there. In all honesty, I probably go on Box Office Mojo pretty often. Now, if you're not familiar with the site, it is a site that you can go on and you can look up every single movie that's been released, probably from like 1980 until present. And it'll tell you how much they made, the stars of the movie, the ranking at the box office. Often it'll have the budget. And when I was doing some research on Beverly Hills Cop, I looked up when it was released, and I'll do that right now. But it was released along some pretty fantastic other films. So basically what you would want to do is you would want to go to Box Office Mojo, and then you would go to the search or title and type in Beverly Hills Cop. And some of the films that are out when Beverly Hills Cop opened up. Now, I'm looking right now. It opened up December 5th, the original, 1984. It made $234 million just in America. And this is 1984 money on about 1,500 screens. But some of the other movies that were in the theaters along the time of Beverly Hills Cop was The Terminator, Missing in Action with Chuck Norris. You've got Supergirl, Amadeus, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Ghostbusters, A Christmas Story, and in the upcoming weeks, you've got a couple of other big hitters, because you have to understand, December is typically one of the months that Hollywood puts out some of the films that they think are going to make a lot of money. Dune came out when Beverly Hills Cop was out. And the funny thing about Beverly Hills Cop is, let me go back here and look for just a moment, is typically a theatrical release a movie will open up, and it might be number one for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks at the most. We've had some spectacular feats like Titanic or Avatar or even Black Panther, and there's some movies that's been number one for multiple weeks in a row. But Beverly Hills Cop was number one at the box office for 15 straight weeks in a row. And if you're wondering what that means from December 7th or December 5th when it opened until March 15th, it ranked number one at the box office after every single week for months and months and months. And that's not something that happens very often. Word of mouth spread. Eddie Murphy was on Saturday Night Live. He was making $30,000 per episode on Saturday Night Live at the time, when most cast members, I'm not sure about that time, but even in today's climate, make about $2,000 a week. He was making $4,000 per $40,000 per episode back then. So everyone knew right away. Eddie Murphy, he had been in a couple of films at this point. 48 Hours. I think he was in Trading Places. But this was his first solo movie, Beverly Hills Cop. And it hit really, really hard. I named some of the other movies that were out. But you've got Starman was out. You've got Johnny Dangerously. Amadeus, like I said. The Flamingo Kid, which was a Kevin Costner movie, which was his first movie. But Beverly Hills Cop had an impact immediately upon release, which signaled not only was Eddie Murphy here, but he was here to stay, because this was his third straight, I think, hit movie in a row. So before this movie became greenlit, now we're transitioning back into Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Before this movie was made, there was a TV pilot about the same thing. Beverly Hills Cop, but it was a TV pilot. And it was about Eddie Murphy playing Axel F. and his son on the police force. And this was probably, I remember reading and hearing something about this probably back in 2006 through 2008, around that time period. And nothing ever came about it. So they made a pilot, showed it to the network, and I think Eddie Murphy was involved a little bit. It didn't get picked up, and it's a good thing that it didn't. It really did. Because I just don't think it was the right time. Because Eddie Murphy at this time was still doing those movies like Meet Dave. He was doing that. He 1,000 Words. He was Norbit. He was doing these types of films. Not what you would call great or even good films. So I'm glad this TV pilot went nowhere. This is Judge Reinhold as Billy Rosewood. It's his first role after 7 years. I was going to his Internet Movie Database, IMDb page, and I had noticed before even doing research on this film that it had been 7 years since he had been in a movie. And he seemed to have been semi-retired previously as well, because there were long gaps, maybe doing a film every 2 years. The last big film that I even was notable was, I think, the Santa Claus 3 with Martin Short and Tim Allen. So like I've stated a couple of times, this film had been in development hell at Paramount since the late 90s, with various directors and producers. At one point, Brett Ratner was supposed to direct. And then the closest that ever happened was when Brett Ratner directed Eddie Murphy and Ben Stiller, Matthew Broderick in the 2011 movie Tower Heist. And, you know, for some reason, I haven't watched that. I don't know why. I don't know why that one was one that kind of slipped by, but it was all around me, and I had the opportunity, and it has some comedic actors that I like, but I just never, the premise never really seemed that great to me. So I just never did watch it. But, yeah. Another thing that I found unbelievable for this, if this is true, and I've looked a couple different places, my sources that I usually do research on, says the budget for this movie was $150 million. Whereas Beverly Hills Cop, it was $30 million. Part 2 was about $40 million. Part 3 was $50. And 30 years later, this has tripled the budget. I guess $10 million higher per, $50 million higher per decade. But Netflix spent $150 million, so it was number one yesterday. I don't know about today. It has, last time I checked, now I think all the reviews are still coming in, 61% positive on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm not sure what the audience score is yet at this point, but I'll be sure to check it out. Hey, Jeremiah, he said he watched it today. He liked it. He enjoyed it. Amber and Jeremiah will be on next week, by the way. They're going to be on. We're going to be doing a release that came out yesterday. We're going to watch it tomorrow, and I'll tell you what it is at the end of the show. Hey, Pam, thank you for watching. And if you want to tune in and watch the show, you can kind of get a little behind the scenes inside the studio. You can go to Ryan Parker on Facebook or the Other People's Show. Also, you can go to the WLSD Facebook page. But this has a 61% positive on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think the audience score will be pretty high as well. I've not yet checked that out. There was no audience score at all when I was looking earlier. But if you want to know, you can just go on to Rotten Tomatoes and it'll tell you the updated scores on that. So let's get into the plot and the story of Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. So Detective Axel Foley is back on the beat. He's in Beverly Hills and he is there to help his daughter, who happens to be a lawyer. And she is going to represent a criminal charged with a cop killer, basically. But she has evidence, or she thinks that there's evidence that this said person didn't commit the crime. He is not a cop killer, and he's being set up by somebody inside the force, inside the police force. Right before Axel Foley decides to take another trip to Beverly Hills, he gets a phone call from Billy Rosewood. Billy Rosewood says some cryptic things, but he also says, listen, I've been working on some corruption inside the department, and I've got some files hidden. All I need is this last bit of evidence, and we can nail them. We can get them. And get these corrupt police officers out of the force, behind bars, off the street. Sorry if I overmodulated, but I'm passionate, as he was too. Billy goes missing. Axel's daughter gets harassed, threatened, and they're not on good terms. He's been kind of an absent father over the last 30 years, you've come to learn. So they don't have the best relationship. But together, along with the newcomers, Detective Abbott, who happens to have been in a relationship with said daughter. So a lot of these things sound maybe cliched, but the plot is secondary to the chemistry and to Eddie Murphy. I mean, I really didn't think... I still am a big Eddie Murphy fan. And when I was coming up, and this is kind of a side note, when I was coming up, it was always about, his comeback is going to be the Nutty Professor. His comeback is going to be the Nutty Professor. And it was built up like it was a lot of failures up until, not a lot, but several of the early 90s were a little bit not as good of movies as some of the others. But it wasn't that they weren't as good, and some weren't, as in Vampire in Brooklyn. I think the long hair, the wig, is kind of what threw that one off. And then you've got Boomerang, which is more of an adult-oriented movie. It's not the wise, cracking Eddie Murphy that, Beverly Hills Cop and Trading Places, and he's maturing as well. And it's something that I don't think a lot of audiences let Eddie Murphy do as much as he would have liked to. Because I think he does take himself a little more seriously than kind of serious. You know what I mean? He can make jokes, but he doesn't want to be what you would say the butt of any kind of joke. And you learn that there was an interview where he used to do the laugh. Not that laugh, but he would do the laugh. And he said that was his laugh, but he quit doing that laugh because that's what everyone would do in their comedy acts. And I think he took it as a dig at him, but it wasn't. It was an endearing laugh. And I did like that laugh. And for a while in my early, I would say mid to late teens, I adopted that Eddie Murphy laugh. I'm not going to attempt it now because I've not tried it in such a long time. But I did it so often that it was my laugh for a couple of years due to these Eddie Murphy movies that I really did enjoy. And it wasn't really, I was reading, in the Entertainment Weekly, because you have to think back in the early mid-90s, the internet wasn't like it is now, and I could go back, but I would have these magazines, the Entertainment Weekly that I go back to, but you could go back to the public library, and you could go back and look at the catalogs of the magazines, and you could see interviews with Eddie Murphy, or you could go on There was a television channel called E. I think there still is. E, Entertainment Television. And they would have, basically, not now, I think they just have Kardashians and reality stuff. But back then, it was just devoted to new movies coming out. Universal Soldier with Van Damme was one of the first featurettes I watched on E. And it was basically, they had Talk Soup was the only thing. But when it basically came out, it was all movie-related things. And if you liked movies and you wanted to know how they were made, who was in them, the budget of them, how the script and everything came together, and it would show these featurettes of these movies, it was very interesting if you were involved in that and had a mind for that type of thing, which I did. I always have. And that's when I kind of gathered and learned a lot about Eddie Murphy. It wasn't that I really grew up listening to his, Delirious albums or Raw, because that wasn't really a thing that was really allowed into my house. Like we didn't really have, I now looking back, I don't really remember even ever watching any kind of comedy, like comedians, stand-up comedians. Now we watched, comedy movies, but a lot of the movies that I went and saw early on in life were more, I guess, adult, or I guess you could say Labyrinth was leaned more toward, child or fantasy. But, we've got Little Shop of Horrors. That was something that I'd seen. Or you have Inner Space with Dennis Quaid and Martin Short. So those types of films, and it wasn't mainly until the 90s with my grandmother's friend Dan. My grandmother Dan and I would go to the movies quite often, and sometimes he would be like, "Hey, you want to go check out a movie?" And sometimes he would go watch a movie, and then I would go watch whatever. It wouldn't matter. I've seen more movies alone than I have with people, just because I'm there to watch the film. And that's what it was like with watching these Eddie Murphy movies as well. And I don't even know why I got on that asterisk. But, we've went through the characters. All the characters here are back. All the characters from the past make an appearance, and they all have screen time. And even if it's just a little more or less glorified cameo, several of these, it's still worth it. And they all get a decent amount of screen time. And they make good use of it. Now, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's shown up. Now, he was a little kid actor on 30 Rock, not 30 Rock, Third Rock from the Sun. Yeah, Third Rock from the Sun. And he's kind of developed over the years and probably will never be a lead in a major Hollywood motion picture. But he's chipped away a nice career as the third or fourth build cast member. He was like one of the co-leads in 500 Days of Summer. He had a part in Inception. He had a part in Batman, what was it called? The Dark Knight Rises, maybe? So he has made out this nice little Hollywood career while still keeping his foot in the independent world with like Brick. And then he did, maybe a decade ago, he did Looper. That was a Rian Johnson film, which I'm not a fan of his, but he did do well on that particular movie. But yeah, the cast is good, and they all just kind of slip back into these roles like it's who they are. And they all do a good job. Now, a favorite scene or least favorite scene? I don't want to give too much away, but Serge, his little return is a nice little chuckle. And there's a few little jokes that... there's a joke, actually, near the very beginning of the film when they're in like a ice hockey rink. I won't give away any of the big set pieces or the chases, but there's a couple. And they're good. They're good. And they're fun. There's nothing really at stake here, but they're good fun. So the little dialogue between Axel and his partner at the beginning of the film in the ice rink is a standout. The chase scenes are all good. There's not a bad one. The little helicopter scene and the banter in that is well done. And the only least favorite, and I won't say scene, but least favorite of this film was the character of Eddie Murphy's daughter. I'm Jane. I'm not really fond of the character. And I had read a couple different criticisms of that character, and I'd listened to a couple of reviews of that as well, but I didn't want to make any judgment until I actually watched the film. And, it kind of, I think, I said it yesterday when I was watching that the movie's about 15 minutes too long. But those 15 minutes that it's too long is about 15 minutes probably of unnecessary stuff with her. So, I might even say 10 minutes with her should be cut out. But she is mainly the only real female in the movie. So, if they were going to have her back in those 10 minutes, they need to make her role a little more substantial and not as a kind of a wet blanket, so to speak. She's a little bit of a wet blanket. Not terribly. It doesn't bog down the film. But, if you were going to take a bathroom break, that would be the time to do it. Except her first scene. Watch that one. After that, you can kind of go to the bathroom, get a Pop-Tart, whatever you need to do. Because she's on for a couple of minutes, and it's, she's a little bit of a wet blanket, like I said. Score music, we've been listening throughout the show. I mean, they have the old favorites, but they mix it with, kind of updated, modern a little bit in some of it. This is kind of, it kind of fits the movie. Originality, this is Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. How original do you think it's going to be? It's not. By any stretch of the imagination. Which is odd. I was thinking about that phrase the other day. Someone used it in my personal life. Then it was actually said in this film, and then I just used it. Odd coincidence? I think not. Random? Yes. Stupid? Yes. Does it matter? No. But yeah, this is not an original film. It's the fourth film in a quadrilogy. So no, it's not original. But it's fun. The poster, actually, I think the poster, there's two different ones that I've found. And I've posted them both. One has Axel sitting on top of a car, gun in hand. The Lions jacket on, palm trees in background, helicopter in top left. He's looking at the camera. Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, whoosh, right across the front. Very good poster. There's another poster as well, and the other poster is that of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, and it's Detective Axel Foley's badge in his picture. So yeah, both good posters. And would I recommend this movie? I would say yes. I'm going to say give Beverly Hills Cop 4 or Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, give it a chance. It's about an hour and 50 minutes, I think. And it's a fun time. It's better than the third. It is on par. It's not quite as good as the second one, but for a fourth movie, it's not bad at all. And I've been feeling, I've kind of been in a weird nostalgic headspace over the last little bit, and this kind of filled that void. And I probably, honestly, will watch it again. And after I watch this, I wanted to go back and revisit the other ones as well. Now, this is nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing that you haven't seen before, but it's Eddie Murphy back doing a character that he was born to play. Now, if you know anything about film and movies, you know that originally Beverly Hills Cop was offered to Sylvester Stallone. And Stallone wanted to make a lot of changes to this movie, to the script. He decided to leave the project, and he went off and he made his own movie, which he wanted to make with this, called Cobra. Which Cobra is a great action movie as well. It's a fun one. And by great, I'm saying in that genre. 80s action movie with Stallone, Cobra. Anthony Wayne and I did that about a year ago. Go back and listen to that episode because we both had love for that movie because it is such a fun one. And this one is too. You get the feeling it's the 80s nostalgia and mainly 80s nostalgia, updated for the new generation, but doing it the way it should be done. So I would recommend Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. And it's on Netflix right now, so if you have Netflix, you can go watch it, leave a comment, and let me know what you think about it. So that is Real Talk. Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Go to all of our social media pages. That's the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. Next week, I do think that Jeremiah and Amber will be back in studio. And we will be talking about the newly released Ty West's end of the trilogy, Maxine, which opened, I think yesterday. I think Maxine opened yesterday. So yes, we have Maxine coming up next Friday. And I've teased for a little while that The Dark Place will have a new episode coming up, and it will in July, probably the third week of July, maybe a Wednesday. Not sure of the date. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to tell you all. I don't think there's anything else that I need to tell you. Stay tuned. In just a moment, The Other People's Show will be right on. And after, I think we're going to do Maxine. And then I think the following week we're going to do the movie, we're going to review the movie Long Legs. And I do know that on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm saying this just because they're keeping it very, very quiet about Nicolas Cage's character in Long Legs. All we do know is that he is a killer. It's in the style of Silence of the Lambs and Seven, and it has a 100% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes and an 8.1 on IMDb. So we're going to be doing reviewing Maxine next week, and then Long Legs the following week. Stay tuned for The Other People's Show. You all have a good night.